Good evening and welcome to everybody. It really is lovely to see some of you that I haven't really seen in the flesh for quite some considerable time. So lovely to have you all here this evening.
On screen, Janice.
Some housekeeping before we begin. We're not expecting the fire alarm to sound this evening, but if it does, please leave the building through the fire exits and meet outside at the fire assembly point. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, although this is a formal committee meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting. We're not expecting, or we haven't got any members of the public present, have we now? Councillors will be using tablet devices to access the agenda for the meeting. This meeting will be recorded and will be uploaded to the council's website. I would just remind you, councillors, if you are planning on filming or recording the meeting, then do please let one of the staff know. So I think that deals with that. No, so nobody's recording and filming. No. Okay, thank you. Right, item 1 on the agenda. Apologies, please.
We have apologies from Councillors Craig, Councillors Jarvis, Pretty and Tidridge.
Right, thank you. Nobody else got it. That's about it, isn't it? Thank you. There is no public participation. The minutes, I would remind you that it's only persons who were present at the last meeting, which was held on the 6th of October 21, and those are myself, Councillors Broadhurst, Bourne and Irish. Those that were not present, then you will be able to abstain. Those councillors are able to vote. Can I approve these as a true record?
Yeah, why not?
Do I have a proposer for and
I'll propose it.
Oh, right, we'll have the verbal one then. Okay, and I think Alan seconded. Okay, all in favour then and all agreed. Lovely, thank you very much. Any against? No abstentions. Thank you very much indeed. All agreed. Thank you, councillors. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to make? If so, please indicate now. And when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interests as they occur to you in the meeting. No interest, thank you. At this point then, I will pass on to item 5 and items 5 through to 7. I would ask Phil, please, to...
Just quickly confirming, Nicki, about training.
I can do it, yeah. Oh, sorry, okay, Nicki will then do...
Sorry, I'm right the button.
Right, oh, feel free. So, item 5 is member training and opportunity, so over to you then, Nicki.
Okay. So the training was held this year in June.
Yeah.
James Button came in and he does a very comprehensive training package which covers the licensing as well as the taxi training. It's a really important course because though it looks like it's split in two, actually he deals with fairness and justice of determining a license application. So it's a really important course. To be able to sit on a licensing panel, members must have received a recent licensing training. Now, obviously, it was annual training, and looking at it, it can't be any more than 2 years since you sat on a licensing training course. Those members that haven't received the training this year will still going to run Southampton with Anti-Forest a training course on October 19th. So the remaining members that haven't received that licensing act training will be on that and will receive a certificate then to say you've had your training and therefore you can sit on the licensing panel. It means then that the local area, then each local area can have 3 members from their local area, whereas I think we've had a couple of times where we haven't been able to draw on that.
Yeah. The difference between the package that Jim Button gave and the difference to the package that Andy Forrester gave is Andy and I are not presenters. James Barton presents you with a very nice pretty certificate, and you'll be lucky to get an email from me saying thank you very much, you did the course. But yeah, I just need to re-emphasise what Nicki's saying. When James Barton does his delivery, he explains to you the Licensing Act, and you go on about taxis and everything, and explain the legislation around that. But the first part, more importantly, he talks about sort of the process of running the hearings, how you reach policy decisions and things like that. And it is vitally important that you do attend. the whole society is getting more litigious, following litigation quite frequently, and the taxi trade is certainly an area where solicitors can see that they can make some money, and so will challenge local authorities. If people or if members have not attended training and they're then making decisions on someone's livelihood, whether they should be granted a licence or whether they're talking about policies, if they've not had the training, that is cause for an appeal, and leaves the authority in a weak position if that training record's not been maintained. I appreciate it is a whole day. Jim Button is very entertaining in the way that he delivers it. It's far more interesting than Andy and I. And so I would always recommend that you come along and attend the Jim Button training. You will get far more out of it that way, and it is really important that you do it for those decisions. Thankfully, we don't have too many, but you never know. It doesn't take too much for suddenly you can end up with a whole pocket of them turn up. I think we went about 4 weeks on the trot 1 month where we had a hearing each week in Southampton, and that can easily happen here as well. So that's the message I'm training from you. Okay. Important hearings that you've had since the last meeting, I make it there were only 2, and that was the Spring Tides hearing that occurred in May, and more recently Wonderberry's Cafe at Netley. Both of those licences were granted. I've not had any negative feedback about that. I know that the Spring Tides one was sort of slightly sensitive in relation to the individuals that were involved there, but everything got dealt with appropriately. I was quite happy with the process that was followed, legally standing, etc., and decisions made all seemed to follow the Act. So positive feedback from me with regards to both those hearings, and they all seem to go well, and no challenges coming up. Okay. So that's item 6. The update on the partnership. The partnership still seems to be working quite well from my perspective of it, and I get positive feedback from colleagues at Eastleigh and yourselves. So that is all good. I did a quick research, and so between the 1st of October last year, 2021, and the 21st of September this year, we've processed 348 applications under the Licensing Act. That is 179 temporary event notices, 36 late temporary event notices, 9 minor variations, 50 personal licences, 7 new premise applications, 57 changes of the DPS, 8 transfers, a variation, and a renewal of the notification of interest. It holds the status quo more or less, I think, from where you were about a year ago. With regards to Gambling Act, there were only 15 applications, and you don't have very many gambling premises anyway. One is a club machine permit, 2 alcohol premises notifications. The premises notifications, they can have up to 2 gaming machines on the notification. 1 new alcohol permit, which allows them, they can have a whole load more, and I suspect that's going to be your Wetherspoons, as they normally have about 5 or 6 machines in their premises, and 11 small society lotteries. I have got numbers around taxis, but I've learned that that's not under your remit, so I won't trouble you with all of those. We investigated a number of complaints. There were 16 Licensing Act complaints, mainly in relation to noise. We had nothing under the Gambling Act. On top of that, officers have conducted regular visits to both gambling and licensed premises and addressing issues identified on those visits, which are usually fairly minor. Gambling premises, they have a duty to or update their risk assessment. And what we often find is the risk assessment's a bit out of date, so we get them to update that, and they're always pretty good. As soon as we tell them something, they always go and get that sorted out. Licensed premises pubs and some of the clubs usually got an out-of-date licence displayed or no licence displayed, so a bit of nagging there. Sometimes we find some variations from the plan that's been there or changes, just minor, nothing that causes us any great concern. On top of that, we have an excellent working relationship and partnership with the licensing police officers. Nicki and I were talking just before the meeting about reviews. You know, it's been a long time since there's been a review in Eastleigh, and a lot of that is because of the partnership working. The way the Licensing Act should work is that the responsible authorities should work with premises to resolve any issues, rather than just jumping straight in and doing reviews. So I've always had the policy that if a problem is identified, that either the police or my officers will attend, and we'll say, here's the facts, these are the problems that are occurring. And we expect the premises to come up with the solutions. But they will help and support them through that process, but it's important they come up with the solutions. And like I say, we'll work with them, maybe point them in the right direction on the odd occasion, and then keep monitoring to make sure that the improvements are there. That way we keep the business running in operation, but at the same time they're then upholding the licensing objectives, and it's the whole purpose of the act. So it's quite a supportive process, and review really is the last resort. That's it. Is anything else we mentioned?
Thank you very much
So,
indeed.
so if anyone has any questions.
Has anyone got any questions? No? That was all very clear. Thank you very much indeed, Bill. I don't think I've got any questions. I was going to just run through what comprises the licensing panel, but we're all very aware of that, aren't we? I think all councillors present have been requested to attend panel, so they all know that we have a reserve. So yes, that's clear. Thank you very much indeed. I think this is one of the shortest meetings I've chaired in a long time. Thank you for coming out, and see you in 6 months' time, I think, isn't it? Or February. What is the date of the next meeting? 22nd of February 2023. So thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
No.